There is an uncomfortable reality that rarely gets mentioned. In spite of the cigarettes, the food rationing, and medical practices that would alarm us today, people living in Britain after the war were, on the whole, healthier than we are now. Obesity was almost unheard of. Diabetes affected very few. Rates of heart disease were far lower than today's levels. The explanation is not complex, and that is what makes it awkward. The truth is that the very behaviors that protected their health are the ones we consciously abandoned. What follows are 13 everyday habits from old Britain that quietly kept people healthier than modern lifestyles ever seem to manage. If you grew up when resilience was more important than comfort, this story will resonate with you. What follows isn't nostalgia, but a look at a childhood marked by hardship, where strength was learned from a young age and life offered no safety nets. Subscribe to our channel so we can continue bringing you this kind of content. Before cars dominated daily life, walking was simply the normal way to move from place to place. During the 1950s, most households did not own a car at all, and even families who had one treated it as something reserved for special outings. As a result, walking was built into the rhythm of daily existence in ways that now feel almost unimaginable. Children walked to school without question. Mothers walked to local shops. Fathers walked to work. The typical housewife covered around 5.5 miles every single day just carrying out her usual responsibilities. No one labeled this as fitness or exercise. It was simply how life worked. If you needed bread, you walked to the baker. If you wanted meat, you went to the butcher on foot. Visiting relatives on a Sunday meant crossing town by walking. Driving a short distance just to buy milk would have seemed utterly absurd. Bicycles were just as common. They were not symbols of athletic ambition, but practical tools of transport. Men cycled to factories wearing suits and caps. Women rode to offices in dresses. Children pedaled to school with satchels strapped to their backs. Even deliveries for local shops were handled by bicycle. Cycle racks were everywhere because everyone needed one. Riding a bike was not a lifestyle statement. It was the most sensible way to travel when buses were infrequent and cars were financially out of reach. A man cycling 5 miles to work and 5 miles home burned a significant amount of energy without ever giving it a second thought. When cars became affordable in the late 1950s, cycling rapidly declined. In its place came long hours sitting still in traffic. If you examine dinnerware from that era, something immediately stands out. The plates are remarkably small. Standard plates in the 1950s were roughly 8 or 9 inches across. Today they are closer to 11 or 12 inches. That slight change nearly doubles the surface area, and human behavior does the rest. People naturally fill their plates. A portion that looked generous decades ago appears meager on a modern plate. Food sizes grew alongside them. A burger once weighed about 4 ounces. Today it often weighs 12. Soft drinks expanded from 7 ounces to 32. French fries grew from 2.5 ounces to nearly 7. Nobody consciously decided to triple their intake. Plates expanded, and people simply followed along. Cooking habits left little room for excess. Ready meals did not exist. Only about 10% of households owned a refrigerator, freezers were almost unheard of, and microwaves were far in the future. Every meal had to be prepared using fresh ingredients purchased that day or the day before. There was no reheating packaged food, no delivery ordered from a phone, and no convenience sandwiches grabbed on the go. Housewives spent hours peeling vegetables, preparing meat, and making pastry by hand. Meals were straightforward and less calorie-dense because elaborate dishes required resources most families did not have. Dinner usually meant meat, potatoes, and vegetables. The simplicity was unintentional, but it kept waistlines small. Snacking barely featured in daily life. People ate breakfast, dinner, and tea, perhaps with a biscuit alongside a mid-morning cup of tea. That was the extent of it. Eating constantly throughout the day, keeping drawers full of snacks, or eating out of boredom rather than hunger simply did not happen. Part of this was cultural, as snacking was viewed as lacking discipline. Part of it was practical, since food cost money and wasting it made no sense. Today, people commonly eat 5 or 6 times a day, supported by entire supermarket aisles devoted to snacks that did not exist decades ago. What we consume between meals alone would have shocked earlier generations. Domestic labor itself was a form of constant physical activity. In the 1950s, housework consumed around 57 hours per week. Without washing machines, laundry involved scrubbing, wringing, and hanging clothes. Without vacuum cleaners, carpets were beaten by hand. Without dishwashers, everything was cleaned in the sink. Fires had to be built, coal carried, and ashes cleared. The average housewife walked about 15,000 steps per day simply managing the home, covering roughly 5.5 miles indoors. Modern appliances returned those hours to us, but they also removed the movement that came with them. Heating habits played a role as well. Most homes had no central heating. A single fire warmed the front room, while bedrooms and bathrooms remained bitterly cold. Seeing your breath indoors during winter was normal. Hot water bottles were essential. The body responds to cold by burning calories to maintain warmth. Constantly heated environments mean metabolism never has to work in that way. Research suggests rising indoor temperatures have contributed to weight gain. Earlier generations endured the cold and stayed lean, while modern households increase the thermostat and struggle with expanding waistlines. Stairs were another source of daily exertion. Lifts existed, but they were rarely used by ordinary people. Homes, shops, and offices relied on staircases, and unless someone was elderly or unwell, climbing them was expected. Choosing a lift over stairs would have seemed lazy. As a result, people climbed far more stairs each day than we do now. This strengthened legs, lungs, and hearts, and supported mobility into old age. Today, escalators and lifts replace that movement, and gym memberships attempt to recreate it artificially. Meals were shared events rather than background activities. Families gathered at the table, food was served, and everyone ate together. Eating in front of screens was not common, largely because televisions were rare. Once the meal ended, eating stopped. Studies consistently show that shared meals lead to lower calorie intake than eating alone. Structure created natural limits, something that has largely disappeared in an age of constant grazing in front of screens. Sugar consumption existed but was obvious. If someone wanted sweetness, they added sugar to tea or spread jam on bread. It was visible and measurable. Today, most sugar intake is hidden inside processed foods, including items that do not even taste sweet. We consume far more sugar than earlier generations while believing we consume less. This shift happened quietly, driven by food manufacturing rather than personal choice. Seasonal eating also shaped health. Food availability followed the calendar. Strawberries appeared in summer and vanished afterward. Apples arrived in autumn. Sprouts were tied to winter holidays. Eating produce flown in from across the world year-round was unimaginable. Diets changed naturally with the seasons, providing variety and freshness. Food spoiled quickly, which discouraged overeating and encouraged buying only what was needed. Meat was treated as something special. It was expensive, so portions were smaller and meals relied heavily on vegetables, potatoes, oats, and pulses. Meat appeared once or twice a week, stretched with gravy and surrounded by piles of vegetables. This accidental near-vegetarian pattern turned out to be healthier than the meat-heavy diets that followed when meat became cheap and abundant. Sleep patterns completed the picture. Without endless entertainment options, people went to bed earlier. Children were asleep by early evening, and adults followed before late night. Long, consistent sleep supported hormonal balance, appetite control, and energy levels. Earlier generations regularly slept 8 or 9 hours without effort. Modern life reduced that to 6 or 7, replaced by caffeine and sugar to compensate. These 13 habits were never framed as health strategies. They were simply how life was lived. Walking more, cycling when possible, eating modest portions, cooking from scratch, limiting snacks, doing physical work, tolerating the cold, climbing stairs, sharing meals, avoiding hidden sugar, eating seasonally, reducing meat, and sleeping properly all happened without instruction. Together, they created a healthier society than the one we inhabit today. Taken together, these habits reveal something important about health that modern discussions often overlook. Good health was not pursued as a goal in itself. It emerged naturally from the way daily life was structured. Movement, moderation, and routine were built into ordinary existence, not added later as corrections. People did not chase wellness. They lived in a way that quietly produced it. There is also a striking absence of anxiety around food and fitness. Calories were not counted, steps were not tracked, and bodies were not constantly scrutinized. People trusted their routines because those routines had been shaped by necessity rather than choice. Ironically, that lack of obsession may have been one of the greatest protections of all. Modern life reversed this relationship. Convenience removed effort, abundance removed restraint, and technology replaced movement. We now spend enormous time and money trying to reintroduce what daily life once provided automatically. Gyms simulate physical labor. Diet plans attempt to recreate portion control. Wellness apps try to enforce habits that used to happen without thought. What is perhaps most sobering is that none of these changes were made with harmful intent. They arrived gradually, each promising comfort, efficiency, or pleasure. Only in hindsight does the cumulative effect become clear. Health did not disappear overnight. It eroded slowly as effort was engineered out of everyday living. Looking back is not about romanticizing hardship or rejecting progress. It is about recognizing that ease carries hidden costs. The challenge now is not to return to the past, but to understand what it offered unintentionally and decide what is worth recovering. Small changes in routine may never fully replicate old Britain, but they can restore some of the balance that modern life quietly took away. There is also a deeper cultural lesson buried beneath these habits. Health in post-war Britain was not individualized. It was communal, shaped by shared routines, shared meals, shared work, and shared limits. People moved together through the day, ate the same foods, and followed similar rhythms. That collective structure reduced extremes. There were fewer opportunities to overindulge, but also fewer pressures to optimize or perfect the body. The modern world emphasizes choice, personalization, and constant availability. Food is always within reach. Transport is always effortless. Entertainment never ends. With that freedom comes responsibility that previous generations never had to carry. They did not need willpower to avoid late-night snacking if the kitchen was cold, dark, and empty. They did not need discipline to exercise if movement was unavoidable. Their environment did the work for them. Another overlooked factor is patience. Life moved at a slower pace, and so did bodies. Weight gain happened slowly, if at all. Illnesses were noticed early because physical effort was part of daily life. Today, long periods of inactivity can hide problems until they are severe. Slowness, once imposed by circumstance, acted as a quiet form of protection. There is also something to be said about satisfaction. Meals were simpler, but they were anticipated. Sleep came easily because days were physically demanding. Leisure felt earned. Modern abundance often dulls these sensations. When everything is available at all times, nothing feels complete, and the body struggles to find balance. Relearning these lessons does not require nostalgia or denial of progress. It requires awareness. Awareness that health is shaped more by environments than intentions, more by routine than resolution. The past reminds us that the healthiest behaviors were once the most ordinary ones, invisible precisely because they were unavoidable. Perhaps the most powerful insight is this: post-war Britain did not design a health system, yet it produced healthier people. Modern Britain designs endless solutions, yet struggles with outcomes. Somewhere between those two realities lies a quieter, simpler answer, not found in extremes, but in the ordinary habits we once practiced without even noticing. If this story resonates with you, share it with someone who has experienced it, or with someone who hasn't. Understanding the origins of that resilience helps connect generations shaped by very different worlds. Subscribe so we can continue bringing you more content like this. See you next time.